Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Federal Contracting Opportunities During COVID-19. Before we begin, I want to thank all those who are contributing to the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Our special thanks to those who are offering security, food distribution, and especially to our healthcare professionals. The sacrifices you are making are deeply appreciated. Also, our thoughts are with all those who have lost ones to this global pandemic. My name is Greg Callender. I am a business consultant with the Puerto Rico Small Business Technology and Development Center, better known as the Puerto Rico SBTDC. The Puerto Rico SBTDC is a collaborative agreement between the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Small Business Administration. The purpose of this agreement is to provide free technical assistance to small and medium-sized businesses in Puerto Rico. This conference is being offered for information and educational purposes only, and should not be interpreted as an endorsement of any product or service. The information contained in this webinar does not constitute a legal or professional consultation. Our thanks to the participants who have registered for this event, not only in Puerto Rico, but throughout the United States. Our speakers today are Ms. Jezebel Rodriguez, who is a Procurement Center representative in the Office of Government Contracting for the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Mr. Jorge Betancourt, who is an Economic Development Specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration. Time permitting, after their respective presentations, we hope to take some questions, in English only, please, from the audience. Questions may be submitted via the questions dialog box you should all see on the side of the screen. With that, I will turn things over to Ms. Jezebel Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jezebel Rodriguez, the Procurement Center representative for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. If you're not sure what a PCR's role and duty are, we are going to explain them real quick. My main job here is to monitor the federal agencies assigned to me to make sure that they are giving small businesses maximum opportunity in federal contracting. How do I do that? Is that the solicitations are sent to me before you see them publicly to make sure that the market research reflects if there are small businesses that can do the project or if there are not any small businesses that can do the project. If they come to me as unrestricted full open solicitations, which means both the large and the small can participate in that solicitation, and I am fully aware that there are several small businesses that can offer that product or service, what I can do is influence the contracting officer to say instead of it going full and open unrestricted, it can then go to a small business set aside, which means that only small businesses can participate in that specific solicitation. And another thing that PCRs do nationwide is that we review and investigate bundled acquisitions. And a bundled acquisition, a really quick example would be if there were 3 different security contracts, security guard services contracts, and all of a sudden the government decided to bundle that into one big contract, which would make it impossible or too big for the small business to participate. That is an example of a bundle acquisition. Next slide, please. Another thing that PCRs do is we assist agencies in meeting prime contracting goals. The next slide will show you what those prime contracting goals are. We do also, as a PCR, provide counseling on acquisition strategies to the installations, as well as we offer training to the installations in regards to new SBA regulations. Me, as a PCR, I do a lot of one-on-one consulting. So if you wanted to meet with me and just have me consult your business on have my opinion on how you think you should strategize to get more federal contracts, that's something that I can definitely do. And if you need me, well, after this COVID-19 pandemic, passes. If you need me to visit you at your business, I can do that as well. Or if it's more convenient for you to come to SBA in San Juan, that's also a possibility. So in this next slide, this tells you what the prime contracting goals are. So if the federal government, just for ease of simplification, in its big federal budget, were to only execute $100 worth of contracts, 23% of that would have to be set aside for small business. So that is what that 23% represents. And then the same thing would go on for the other socioeconomic categories: hub zones, small disadvantage, and women. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the SBA website. Unfortunately, it has the information on the COVID-19 because of what we're currently going through. But I want to walk you through the steps of how you can locate a PCR in your area if you ever needed to contact them. So you would go to sba.gov. Next slide, please. And then you will click on federal contracting. Next slide, please. And then under federal contracting, there's 3 blue tabs. And so you can go to under counseling and help and click on procurement center representatives directory. If you ever wanted to contact my boss, it would be the contracting area director. So for now, right now, we're going to go into the PCR directory. Next slide, please. So how procurement centers are divided up is into 6 areas nationwide. So if you were to click on Area 1, for example, next slide, please, which is the area that I belong to, it'll show you all the states that Area 1 covers. So basically the 6 New England states: New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And so if you wanted to see who the PCR is for Connecticut, it would be Mr. Con Wynn. And then that has his contact information. Next slide, please. So if you wanted to see who the PCR for Puerto Rico, of course it would be me, and that is my contact information as well. And it tells you what activities that I'm assigned to monitor, which would be Fort Buchanan, GSA, the National Guard, and the one that's missing here is the Veterans Administration. Next slide, please. So here we go. This is so for this presentation, I put 6 different opportunities. So this is the first one. This is for DLA, and I even provided a link where you can click on it and it'll directly pop up the information on beta.sam. And so for here, they're looking for a request for information for personal protective equipment in response to COVID-19. If you were to go under notice ID, I would just want to explain that real quick. So the SPE1C1 that we see under notice ID, the first 6 digits always reflect who is the agency that put out the solicitation. The next 2 numbers, which is 20, is the fiscal year in which that opportunity came out. And then the R is the request for proposal, and then they ended it with the COVID-19. So that is just to give you a heads up of if you were targeting a specific agency, how you can go about it, and it's by looking at the first six numbers and letters identified in the solicitation. Next slide, please. So again, all we did was just scroll down, and then it tells you here's the point of contact for this particular solicitation. That's her name and email. Next slide, please. As we go further down, you'll see the attachment. And so she only has 1 attachment there. So if we were to click on the attachment, next slide, please. So this is the Word document that's opened up. It tells you when the due date is, which is Tuesday, 24th of March at 5 p.m. And then under categories, it tells you specifically what type of PPE they're looking for at DLA: aprons, hood, masks, booties, gloves, boots, etc. When I give my class on how to read a federal solicitation, one of the things that I always say is read the entire document. Do not assume just because it says the due date is Tuesday, March 24th. We will see that on the following page, which is an exemption to that date and time. Next slide, please. So again, at the end, she says, although initial responses are required by 5 p.m. Tuesday, 24th of March 2020, however, DLA will accept any and all responses received after this date and time for any ongoing requirements, which in this case makes sense. We're living in an unprecedented time. So I think in this case, they eliminated the bureaucracy a little bit. So even though it already technically closed, if you are interested and this is something that you can do, masks, boots, I would definitely highly suggest you get in contact with Jessica so that you can be considered for a potential federal contract. Next slide, please. So this is opportunity number 2, and this one is coming out of FEMA. And again, they're looking for personal protective equipment. And in this case, they added medical supplies as well. So if we go to notice ID, you will see that the first 6 digits identifies who the agency that is putting out the solicitation comes from. The following 2 digits is 20, which is the fiscal year in which the solicitation came out of. And that's important because that tells you what funds the fiscal year applies to. And then the R is the request for proposal. And then the last few set of numbers is just something that the agency uses to identify the solicitation. It's an internal number, has nothing really to do with you. It's not important to you. It's important to the agency. Next slide, please. So again, if we just go down on this solicitation, I highlighted there that this is a standing solicitation. And in yellow, I highlighted that, the date of receipt of offers, therefore offers may be submitted for consideration at any time. So similar to what DLA did, it's an open solicitation. So although it technically might have closed, FEMA is still accepting offers. If that's something that you can submit, something that a service or a product that you can supply, definitely get in contact with FEMA, and then you can potentially get a federal contract. Next slide, please. So again, the same opportunity, all we did is just go down the screen. So you'll see the different attachments, and in this case, they've already answered questions and answers, and they did it twice. So if you look at updated date within the table, the first one was attachment G, well, actually attachment F, amendment 3, which was April 1st. And I guess they had a separate set of questions that they did in attachment G on the same day. And then the following day on April 2nd, they had, a third set of questions. Next slide, please. It's very important that you do view the question and answers because most likely you'll have the same questions and they've already been answered. And I would recommend that before submitting any questions to the agency. And so again, if we go further down on the screen, you'll see attachment A is a supply list. Now that supply list is an Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty extensive of all the stuff that FEMA is looking for. I did not include it for this presentation, but this presentation will be handed out to all participants. And therefore, because you have the solicitation number, you're able to search it in beta.sam in the search function, and it should appear, and then you could click on the supply list. But again, attachment B is gowns, E is face masks, C is gloves, etc. Next slide, please. So here's opportunity number 3 for the National Geospatial Agency. And in this case, they're specifically looking for surgical mask and sanitizing wipes. And again, if we go under notice ID, the first 6 digits, HM1575, identify the agency in which is expending the funds. And the fiscal year is fiscal year 20, that's where the funds come out of. And then R is a request for proposal. Next slide, please. So again, if we just go down on this particular opportunity, we will see that the original response date is actually tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time. It's always important to be aware of the standard times. So we here in Puerto Rico, we're in Atlantic Standard Time, and so the solicitation is due on their time, which is Central Daylight Time. So always just to keep aware that sometimes you're rushing, but in reality is you probably have a few more hours if you paid attention to what daylight time or standard time the response is required to. And then if we go further down under classification, you'll see the product service code that they're using for this particular solicitation, and you'll see the NAICS code. Not only does this help you for this particular pandemic, but in the future, once everything subsides and gets back to normal, if you wanted to see what NAICS codes the federal government uses to buy medical equipment or what product service codes they use to buy surgical clothing, here it is. You have it already. There's no guesswork. All you have to do is just write it. Next slide, please. So in this case, the NGA, as I stated before, they're looking for surgical masks and sanitizing wipes. And if we go down to the third paragraph, middle sentence, it says it's for the facilities in Springfield, Virginia, St. Louis, Missouri, and Arnold, Missouri. And that later facilities might be added to the procurement. So again, if this is something that you can do, I would definitely contact the agency. Next slide, please. So here's opportunity number 5. This one is for COVID emergency Shanto preparatory school. I think they meant to say cleaning, and I assume that only because since I've already read through the solicitation requirements, pretty sure that's what they mean. And again, here you have the notice ID. If you wanted to work with the Department of Interior, you know that all their notices ID starts with 140A23. Next slide, please. So in this one, they actually set it aside for the Indian Small Business Economic Enterprise. So this is important that you read the synopsis of the solicitation in its entirety. So yeah, you could probably do cleaning, but you're most likely not an Indian Small Business Economic Enterprise, which means you are not able to participate in the solicitation. Only those that have been certified as an Indian small business can actually submit an offer. And again, here's the product service code, which is H, but we'll find out later what that service code is in its totality. And then here's the NAICS code that the agency is using. Next slide, please. Again, here's the attachment, and the attachment for this particular opportunity connects us to a different website, which is Fed Connect. Next slide, please. And so here is what opened up, and then I have an arrow just so that you're aware that this is the original solicitation. Now they have under amendment, they have 2 amendments, and then each amendment has a different solicitation. When I was a contracting officer, what I would do is when I amended the solicitation, I would highlight the changes in yellow so you can see specifically what was changed in the solicitation. I am not sure if the DOI, Department of Interior, is what they're doing with this, but it's just a heads up that make sure you're looking at the latest amended solicitation which has all of the updated changes. Next slide, please. So again, I opened up the solicitation, and then this is for school disinfecting services. Next slide, please. So the last opportunity that I'll mention today in the presentation is for laundry services. And so this is for the Army. Next slide, please. So again, pay attention to the dates when they're due. So although this was originally published on April 1st, they updated it on April 2nd, and now the updated date offers were due April 3rd. Again, this one has passed, but it's just to give you a way or to teach you how to navigate this website. Next slide, please. So again, here's the NAICS code. Here's the NAICS code, and then here's the product service code, S209 housekeeping. So if you're currently on the line and you do laundry services, hey, I just gave you a heads up. Or if you know of somebody that does laundry services and would like to provide their services to the federal government, again, this is a way of how to use the system to search it so that what you're specifically looking for products and services comes up. Next slide, please. Again, so for the laundry services, this is actually for Germany. And it tells you why they want it is to provide a sustainable and economical laundry service to support U.S. soldiers quarantined at range 213 in Germany. And this is actually, can you go to the next slide? What was surprising about this opportunity specifically was that it's for a 1-year laundry service contract. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, and then here's the period of performance, which says April 6th to April 5th, 2021. Next slide, please. So any opportunity that is above $25,000 by law has to be publicized in beta.sam.gov. And so once on the website, on the gray hand side, it says contract opportunities. You have to make sure you pick the right one that you're looking for, because you might get award data, which is contracts that have already been executed. And you don't want that. You want to see what opportunities are currently out there. So, excuse me, in this case, I typed in COVID-19, and as you can see, I got a lot of options. So I just put COVID-19 and then I hit search. Next slide, please. And so in the keyword box will always appear what you typed in. And so this is always good to double check, because sometimes we type so fast and then we end up with no search results. And if you look at that box, you'll see what actually you typed in letter by letter. I circled in red the current date of offers are due. When was it last updated? In this case, this is a broad agency announcement, which you only see under research and development type of solicitations. And then under sort by relevance, what I recommend in my experience with this system is to use the last updated date. And it'll give you that option in the drop-down menu. And we'll see that in the next slide. So next slide, please. So again, you see the sort by, it's changed to last updated date, and then you'll see that the search results changed, and it gave me the solicitation that last was updated. And then what you could do, if you do have an account, is you can hit the save search function, and then next slide, please. And then you can call that anything that you want. I have several search agents saved. But for this one, I just saved it COVID-19 and then hit save. Next slide, please. And then here it comes. Here it is. It says COVID-19 in my search results. Next slide, please. And again, this is how, once you click on save searches, all of your save searches will appear. In this case, I have several, but I just took a picture of the two that came up on my screen, which is I'm watching the needle industry and then COVID-19. And the keyword under COVID-19 is COVID-19, but for the needle industry, it's a little cut off. But the keyword there is I was searching specifically for a NAICS code. So anytime that NAICS code comes up, I will see it under that save search agent. Next slide, please. So now I will hand it over to Jorge.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope are doing well. For the next slide, I just want to, present to all of you the importance that you claim your social economic factors in order to participate on the federal market. That is extremely important that if you're already registered on SAM, System for Award Management, or you are on this webinar and want to initiate and participate with the federal government sale of product and service, that you go to sam.gov and register and claim what is the requirement that Jezebel mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. That, for example, for a small business, the federal government have a requirement to comply with at least 24% of the total contracting, separate those for small business, and small disadvantaged business, woman-owned small business, economic disadvantaged woman-owned small business, and veteran-owned small business. Those are the social economic factors that are extremely important that you register on SAM.gov, make you and your company available through that system, and that it is through that and the SBA database that the contractor is looking for firms that comply with those socioeconomic factors. Those I already mentioned are the ones that you by yourself can register and claim those social economic factors or certification. The last two ones, that 8A business development and Hobson certification, are the ones that SBA provide to the process that you must submit your solicitation, and then SBA will determine if you are or not a 8A or Hobson firm, and SBA is the one that will show on your SAM database that you comply with those certifications or not, okay, or on SBA database. I just want to mention briefly each certification. The first one is small business, and it's based on the size standard, and you can find that on sba.gov and look for size standard. And then for each industry, the SBA posts a list of which will be your number of sales for the last three years, or the number of employee if you are manufacturing or wholesale. So when you determine that based on the small business size standard that you qualify as a small business, you can buy your own, register on SAM and on our dynamic small business database, just claim that social factor for you and your firm. Also, the next one, social economic factor, is small disadvantaged business. Those businesses are the ones that can claim that the owner or the control of the firm, most 51% or more, are controlled by one of those social disadvantage factor that could be, for Puerto Rico, Hispanic. So if you are from Puerto Rico and you own the 100% of the business or more than 51% of the business, this is one factor for a small disadvantaged business. The second one is that those that claim the social economic factor, also the personal net worth is less than $700,000 after you remove from your network your primary personal residence, the equity of that one, ownership in business. You own the 100% of the business, but the value of that business you will remove from the formula. The all those investment on retirement like IRA, and you also can retire from the formula. After that, then your network cannot be more than must be less than $750,000 in order to participate as a small disadvantaged business. So this certification has to you must require to comply with both the social disadvantage and the economical disadvantage for federal government. Okay. So also there is a certification for a veteran-owned disabled veteran, a small business, and this is for all an agency except for Veterans Administration, that they require that you register on their own database. For the rest of all the agency, you will be registered on SAM and on Dynamic Small Business from SBA to claim that you are a veteran, and you can participate, on the opportunity set aside for veterans. If you claim and you can prove, you have documents to prove that you're a veteran and you have a disability from the Veteran Administration. Then the last one, self-certification, is the woman-owned small business. This one will be soon changed to a formal certification. So in order to be a woman-owned small business certified, there will be required that you submit a formal solicitation to SBA and document the compliance for the requirement for the certification, and SBA will provide you with that the certification of woman-owned small business and or economic disadvantaged woman-owned small business. But right now, it's still a self-certification for this month, and we expected to change that on summer. So those are the requirements. The woman, the NICE code must be a small business for the industry. The woman must control the firm or the business. 51% of that must be unconditionally controlled by the woman, or women's, could be more than one. The woman must be the one that we on the day-to-day operation and manage the business. And then as control of the business will be the person that can make the long-term decision, make the payments, hire, all those decisions that go with the control of the firm. Also must have the highest position, if there is a CEO, but the woman will be the CEO. The boss, she will be the boss, and must be in the full-time normal working hour of that business. So the one must be in the day-to-day operation in order to claim that is a woman-owned small business firm. And for economical disadvantage, woman-owned small business, so for women, there is 2 certifications. It's the same requirement I already explained, but you must add for this one that you can claim the economic disadvantage. That is the same formula, the 700 network, 700,000 as a personal network after you reduce or remove the ownership of your business, the the equity of your home, and investment on retirement plans, things like that. So those are that you can claim through SAM.gov. go to through that process, you will be required as a small business to also fill out the small business database that we call a dynamic small business. And on those registered, then you will claim by yourself that you have those socioeconomic factors. And then after register, you will be able to participate and look for opportunity set aside for each of those certifications of all or social economic factors. For finishing, we have the two formats that I already let you know that there is two formal certification for small business, and it is 8A, that is a social and economical disadvantage certification. That if you're eligible and and obtain the certification, you will be able to obtain contract up to 4 million or say 6.5 million is manufacturer. We don't need to be a competitive firm. So if you comply with everything, you can negotiate direct with the agency to participate on those contracts without the need to compete on that area. And for Hobson, there is go to a small business owned and controlled by U.S. citizens that are in an area determined by SBA as a Hobson. Okay, we have a map that is listed on the website sba.gov Hobson that you can find, but also I know that probably there's some question how I can participate, how I learn to do those certifications, who can help me, things like that. Jezebel, take from there. You have some. Are you
So
there, Jezebel?
yes, just to wrap up the presentation, if you were not aware, the district office does offer several seminars that repeat every month. So Government 101 Part 1 certification just gives you a more detailed presentation in regards to woman-owned, 8A, hub zone, service-disabled veteran-owned. Jorge will go into more details in that presentation. And I also joined him as well, and I explained how the federal government purchases. For example, we use the credit card, and when do we not use the credit card versus when we go a full-blown acquisition, etc. I explain all that in part 1. Part 2 is pretty cool because that's where we teach you how to market yourself to the federal government. So if you were to come to me and pitch me your company, we actually give you tips on how to do that. You need your capability statement, you need a business card, what to include, what information to include on those two types of documents that will make your presentation even better when you meet with the contracting officers. And then we give the hub zone because it's one of the formal certifications. It's very extensive because it has a lot of details. Jorge gives that one separately, but we give a summary in part 1 of hub zone. So if you think you're in a hub zone and that's something that you're interested in, then we definitely recommend that you come to the hub zone certification class. Now, the one I highlighted in red is the one that I personally give, and it's the ABCs on how to read a solicitation. It's typically 2 to 3 hours long, and I go sentence by sentence and explain how the government talks. I interpret what is that the government is meaning, what clauses, where can you find it, basically just how to digest a federal solicitation. And once we get back to normal, we'll post dates, and then you can sign up to see if you're interested. And hopefully, by learning how to read a solicitation, you'll submit a better proposal. And so then we have, if you're a veteran on the line, thank you for your service. We have the Boots to Business seminar and the Veterans Business Development Workshop. We have the Entrepreneur Development Workshop that talks about all the commercial loans that are available.
Excuse me, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm sorry, sorry to interject. Ladies and gentlemen, we only have a couple of minutes left in terms of the webinar. I do see that we have some questions, so I'm going to pose some of the questions to our presenters. I think some of the questions have already been answered in the presentation, but I'll begin with a question, and please, Ms. Rodriguez or Mr. Betancourt, either one of you, please feel free to respond. The first question is, what is SAM?
So SAM is System for Award Management. and that is the site. If you want to provide your product or service to the federal government, you must register in SAM.gov.
Next question comes from a company that says that they submitted a request a couple of years ago and that their documentation may have expired. They want to know how they can verify their status or reactivate it.
You mean their status within SAM?
I believe the question relates to SAM.
They can contact federal contracting for assistance.
So SBA has several resources, and one of them is the Federal Contracting Center, also called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. They're located nationwide, but the one here in Puerto Rico is called the Federal Contracting Center. They're next to Telemundo in the building of Fomento. If you go to the last slide, Jorge, where we have our contact information, if you want it, to send me an email and I'll send it directly to you. They would be the best resource to figure out when or if your SAM is expired or active.
Thank you. Next question. Where can I find opportunities for accounting or project management?
So any opportunity above 25,000 would be in beta.sam.gov, and you'd have to figure out the NAICS code and use the NAICS code as a search function.
Another question that I believe you may have addressed during the presentation, but do hub zone areas get a priority or any other type of advantage with respect to contracts?
So the only advantage that hub zone gets is when you compete on an unrestricted full and open competition, you get a 10% price evaluation preference.
Next question, what is the NAIC code for WOSBs?
So if you were to Google women-owned small business NAICS code list, it'll come up. There's one list for women-owned, and then there's another one for economically disadvantaged women-owned.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's 2 o'clock, so I believe that we have to wrap up today's presentation. I want to thank both Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Betancourt for their time. Want to let you all know that this webinar will soon be available on our website. Our web address is prsbtdc.org. Once again, our web address is prsbtdc.org. At the end of this webinar, you will receive an evaluation with questions about this presentation. We encourage you to complete it, as your feedback helps us to improve our services. We will be offering other webinars in the future, so again, we ask you to check in and visit our website, prsbtdc.org, to get more information about them. Thank you very much to everyone who was in attendance, and enjoy the rest of your day.